Nigel Cecil, calling things out as you like it, especially for his fair-minded friends.
It's a blusty, windy day, so hello to all my fair-minded friends.
Cobblers to your fair-minded friends.
And cobblers to you too, but if you're fair-minded, you're still welcome. Hello, Chakabatties. Thank you for joining me, moi, Nigel Cecil, entertainment entrepreneur, and this particular topic. We weren't expecting to do this video, were we, Hilary? And given the subject matter, well, we decided we ought to put a content warning screen up there, a content warning, just to let you know that you might be triggered by some of the information and topic in this video, because my fair-minded friends have been in touch and we've been inundated, haven't we, Hilary? Yes, to certain things that have appeared in the last couple of days in the media and also been discussed on television. The word triggered. Now, triggered and content warning usually refers to an artistic production in theatre or film or books or even a picture, something that might stimulate in the person viewing it, taking part in it, an emotional response that's disproportionate to the stimulus that caused it. But what's happened is, triggered for many people nowadays, well, they've sort of decided, well, triggered means that if I'm offended in some way or I feel uncomfortable, then I've been triggered. But you see, triggered refers to an actual trauma, somebody's response in the way of a mental health condition, a symptom. And that means, for example, give me an example. Yes, you might have been in a car accident, very traumatic, and whilst you were in the accident, a certain tune was playing on the radio. And so when you were recovering, that tune was in your mind and you might shut it out. But then, without really knowing it, anytime you hear that tune, you suddenly go, because it's brought a flashback, a traumatic event. So the idea that now trigger means, well, anything that makes you feel uncomfortable or offended actually downgrades what we should be doing and looking after the mental health of those people who are experiencing real trauma. And so that brings me to what's brought this up, doesn't it, Hilary? Yes, you see, the Chichester Festival have issued a trigger warning about the sound of music. Now, I won't go into details and mention names, should I, Hilary? No. We won't relate to the content warning. But they've done it about the sound of music because some might have an emotional, traumatic, mental symptom response, or will they feel uncomfortable or offended? And the two things are different because obviously we need to look after those persons who do have a mental health problem because they do need all our help. But where does that leave us? It also means, for example, if we're going to trigger everything, yes, what about the show in London where, well, they've been told, well, you can't have that advert on Transport for London because it shows a cake. It shows a cake, and that equally might trigger someone, well, to think about eating the wrong sort of food. So let's just have a look at those two captions, shall we? Is it, as the media seem to imply, a trigger warning, or, as the Chichester Festival Theatre seems to say, a content warning? Are they one and the same thing? Those two captions there highlighting the current topics that have given rise to this video about trigger warnings. But who decides what triggers a trigger warning? Because if it means anybody and everything that might cause someone to feel uncomfortable or offended, where does it stop? May a group of people get together and say, that deserves a trigger warning? Because if that's the case, what does it do to the ability of a creative to feel they are free to express what they want in their artistic productions? Now, obviously, there's no rule or law that says, well, you can do anything you want and it doesn't matter if it offends somebody, because one has to act with responsibility. But if you're going to have the generalisation that, well, if you're offended or if you feel uncomfortable, but a trigger warning, then that seems, unless there's clear boundaries, a little bit of a step too far, don't you think? What do you think? Send me an email and let me know. But meanwhile, I've had a little thought. There's a website called Does the Dog Die? DoesTheDogDie.com. Here's their caption. The concept of the website DoesTheDogDie.com, giving an opportunity for an individual who is worried about the content of an artistic presentation, or even reading a book for that matter, might contain something which actually triggers them to relive the original trauma. Well, they can check. And that's the key. Reliving the original trauma. And that really doesn't stretch to just being offended or feeling uncomfortable, does it? So who decides what should or should not have a trigger warning? Because if it's just all-encompassing, does that not restrict the ability of creatives, performers, authors to rely that they can, well, just freely express things? Now, before anybody says anything, I'm not saying that somehow everybody and anyone should be free to express everything, because one should always be aware what might cause someone to mentally have to relive their original trauma. And in those circumstances, clearly, content warnings should be given. But without some barrier, it's going to be everywhere. Well, you can't eat cake on stage, it might upset somebody. And we have to have a warning about that, and a warning about that. Where will it stop? And thereby, well, I've decided we can have an all-encompassing warning. We'll call it the lid warning, shall we? Yes, the lid warning. Why? Because life is dangerous. That's the warning. Life is dangerous. It will lead to your death. But there is hope. Because at the end of the day, well, it's life. And we have to learn to live with it as far as is reasonable. So when it comes to trigger warnings, they should be restricted to being reasonable. Otherwise, they become weapons for others to say, you can't do that, and everybody's checking what they can and can't do. So trigger warnings, let's go back to the original meaning. The importance that it triggers disproportionate responses that causes those being triggered to relive their original emotional trauma. I mean, there's all sorts of other words you can use. Outrage, shock. I mean, just think about it. But remember, my overarching idea, the concept, the lid concept. Life is dangerous. It will lead to your death. But there is hope. Why? Oh, Hillary, Joker Rooney, yes. Joker Rooney, Hillary, what have you got for me? Do I need a content warning? Let's see. Hillary always tries to do one that relates to... Hang on. This is the one from the last video that I couldn't say because you wanted me to mention the Equity General Secretary. What? Some have emailed. Well, I'm not going to fall for that one just yet. Have you got Plan B again? Yes. Thank you, Hillary. Plan B. What's the? Oh no. This one. Yes. If an only doggy movie. You've got the dogs in. I like that one. If an only doggy movie Harry Potter film was being produced, who would play Harry? Who would play Harry in an only doggy movie Harry Potter film? Spaniel Radcliffe. Spaniel Radcliffe. Yes, indeed. That's making me laugh indeed. Right, well, the next video should have been this video about artificial intelligence, so it'll now be the next video, I hope, unless something else crops up. So please join me again. And of course, strawberries of love to everybody. And don't forget, life is dangerous. It may lead to your death. Well, it will lead to your death. But there is hope. Please join me again.
Nigel Cecil's Showbiz Secrets. Things Mrs. Worthington didn't know.